First up, every 4 years, presidential election coverage ramps up around this time with relentless scrutiny of everything the nominees say and do. But this time around, we're also getting something new. Deep dives into a scenario that used to be unthinkable. The basic mechanisms of American democracy breaking down. Adam Riley has more.
Last year, we did a Beat the Press segment urging the media to take seriously the possibility that President Trump won't leave office if he loses.
I can envision.
Now, judging from the headlines, so can a lot of other people.
All the evidence, just literally all of it, lines up.
That's Pulitzer winner Barton Gellman, whose New Atlantic story says Trump would never concede and that his campaign is already weighing, quote, bypassing election results and appointing loyal electors in battleground states, meaning turn it over to GOP-run legislatures so the state's electoral votes go to Trump even if Joe Biden wins. If that sounds crazy, consider what the president said this week when asked if he'll guarantee a peaceful transfer of power if he loses.
We're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster. Get rid of the ballots and we'll have a very peaceful, there won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
In other words, if I lose, the election wasn't legitimate. The same thing he said 4 years ago.
That I will totally accept the results of this great and historic presidential election if I win.
With the 2020 election just 5.5 weeks away, the prospect of something unprecedented is finally getting plenty of attention.
What happened in the last few days is a 6-alarm fire. I think it's DEFCON 5.
Which might be the reaction the Trump campaign wants. An attorney notes The Atlantic quotes a Trump campaign legal advisor who apparently thinks talking about this stuff is beneficial, a distraction from Trump's poor poll numbers, say, or the continuing toll of COVID. So maybe the question isn't whether to cover this story, but how.
So Dan Lothian, it was interesting. I was watching Tom Friedman on CNN last night, and he was saying this is all we should be talking about because it threatens the very democracy that we all abide by. But then you've got others saying, listen, if we focus on this, it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and because, Trump says things and then they end up happening, whether everybody appreciates it or not, and that it distracts from things like the fact that he isn't doing as well as he would like. If the polls were doing well, he would be pointing to that. Instead, he's focusing on this.
Right. Look, I think you can't ignore this. This is kind of like the conversation we've had in the past about whether you should cover the president every time he tweets. It's important. He's the president. You have to cover it. The question is, how should you cover it? Saying that this is a 5-alarm fire or DEFCON, whatever it is, I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think it has to be measured coverage. You have to point out that this is what the president is saying. And how should you think about the election differently this time around? Because you may not wake up in the morning and know who the next president is. But you can't ignore it. You have to pay attention to it when the president says it.
I'm with Dan. You have to report it. I think it is a 6-alarm fire. If you don't report it, it's like looking at your house burned down and not doing anything about it. I give kudos this week to the reporter Brian Karam, who asked the question that surfaced all of this once again and put it into focus at that news conference. And I applaud him. I think it was great for him to ask the question and to persist in asking the question. I think he gets extra points for wearing a face mask that says America needs journalists. He is a dogged reporter. He has been around. He has been jailed for not revealing a source. And he works now, surprisingly, for Playboy magazine. Not even though Playboy still have reporters, much less reporters who cover the White House. But I feel strongly that we need to be reporting this, putting it into perspective, and not ignoring it in any way.
Well, again, I've been saying all along that not everything that the president says needs to be covered with the same amount of weight, that there is a way to pay attention to it. So, yes, the prospect of what he's talking about is a 6-alarm fire. But what if we told the story by saying, first, here is what the Constitution says. Here is what the probability is. Now, let me put inside that, in that context, what President Trump has said. Similar to the lawyer that we read who went sort of piece by piece in Barton Gellman's article and said, here are some things that need to be articulated. Like one of the people that he quoted was Trump's legal advisor. And what benefit would he have to put this forward? I mean, that's something to think about. So we just have to be, to me, more discerning about what pieces of information go out there and what is the overall context in which we sit the president's comments.
This is very serious business, but at the same time, I think that we're overblowing it a little bit. I thought Barton Gellman had a lot of really good and important information in his Atlantic piece, but again, I thought it was ratcheted up a little bit more than we really need to worry about. These scenarios are still very unlikely. I'll just point out that Michael Cohen, the Boston Globe columnist, not the former Donald Trump lawyer, was putting up some interesting tweets showing that the gap in mail-in voting versus in-person voting between Democrats and Republicans is beginning to close. Democrats are paying attention, and more of them are saying they're going to vote in person or they're going to use drop boxes instead of the mail. And I think a lot of the problem we're worried about will be, it's not over the next few weeks.
But, Dan Lothian, the media loves to ratchet things up, as Dan Kennedy just said, like, can't wait for a brokered convention or something like that. But, Donald Trump said the last time around that he kept saying the election is rigged, until he won. But the truth of the matter is it was rigged last time. The Russians were involved in it. So focusing on this kind of thing at this point seems to make sense to me.
Well, I think you have to focus on it. It's just, at what level? Do you have the volume high, or do you just do a more measured approach, providing more context to it? These are unprecedented times that we're living in, and for us to sort of just ignore this and make the audience believe that everything will be like the past would be wrong, right? We have to say these are the possibilities, however unlikely.
Yeah. All right.
I don't think you can ignore them either. I think that, we've talked a lot about mail-in ballots in the past. Dan just mentioned it. I trust the accuracy of them. Once again, I don't trust the workability of this election. Several states are allowing ballots to be counted after Election Day. That time period allows Trump, if anything's contested, to go full demagogue, and that's a problem.
All right.